Hello, welcome to See Us Now. In this episode, we're going to be talking about all things related to motherhood.
As an elite athlete, again, as a woman in elite sport as well, you don't know how your body's going to bounce back. Are you going to be able to come back on, onto the court? Do you even want to?
It still doesn't change the fact that you're going to have to be out of the sport and out of playing for probably the best part of 6 months if you decide to get pregnant.
Now I'm thinking, for my second baby, when is the right time?
Let's talk a little bit about motherhood and being a mum and playing professional sport. Mary, I'm going to come to you first because you're the only one on this sofa with a child. Your story is obviously so incredibly unique, but tell us sort of like how you balance it first, because that must be so difficult.
Yes, so a little bit of backstory. I had my boy when I was 20, so he's now 7 and I'm 27, so how good is that? But being a mother and also an elite athlete is challenging. You kind of have to have the support system around. I was privileged enough when I had my boy. My mum was always there and raised my boy for me almost, because when he was 3, I got the contract to come here in Loughborough, and by then I didn't have an option to bring him with me. So my mom was always with him during the 6 months I was over here, but 10 months. And then I'll have the summer with him and then come back in September to start uni and then go back in June when the season is done. So that's have been kind of how I balanced it. But since he has joined last year, it's been a year now, almost a year, in April. It's kind of hard, but obviously having the support system, like I said, my boyfriend has been there for me. They're like, literally cannot separate them. When I wear for netball, they're having the boys' time. And I'm the one inconveniencing their boys' time. So I'm the one with all the rules, like, don't do this, do that, tidy up your mess,
You're
blah,
bad
blah. Yeah, so I'm the one spoiling all the fun. But just having that support system, and obviously with this league has become more competitive year in and out. And I think it's kind of hard juggle if you don't have the support system, like single moms. For those who parents live like miles away, not even in the country, like I'm an import, so I don't have my family with me. So I come from Uganda, my mom is in Uganda, and when you talk about visa-wise, we don't have a lot of options to bring our family here. So it's not an easy journey to just say you're going to move to a different country and you're going to bring all your support system along. It's not like that. So it's been a process for me, and it's been hard. When he was away, I always judged myself for being too far away from him. Like, just even 2 days away from your baby is emotional enough, but just imagine 6 months of constantly just trying to reach out on their schedule as well, different time frame. You find him napping, you don't want to interrupt him. You only have to say, oh, I'm gonna send you some money, buy some ice cream. How fun is that? You need more toys and stuff like that. It's just been hard to just keep up and obviously stay connected with him over the phone, have to reach to my mom always, and just constant worrying, just knowing, is he okay? Is his health okay? Obviously, in Uganda, it's so different. I cannot even go to it. It's so different. The environment is different. How things are set up is different. You have to kind of pay for everything, like childcare, school, health, everything, medication. You have to pay for everything. So it's just always like trying to send enough money back home always. Every month to make sure he's well taken care of. But I have sort of peace of mind now he's here. Keeping a close eye on him, know what my rules are, and again, doing what I love, so couldn't be more happier.
What was that moment like then, that day when you finally got to move him over to the UK?
Oh my God, yeah, it was so magical. It was a journey as well. It's just like with the visa stuff, it's not easy. You kind of have to do a lot of paperwork, which took me about 4 months. Mine was complicated. because he came as a dependent, and to be able to have to bring her as a dependent, you have to be the parent. Like obviously me and his dad separated a long time ago, before he was even born, so he was never in the picture, but in the visa it has to be there and clarified, and you have to do a lot of paperwork in courts, and it was just always the back things you needed to do, and you always have to focus in netball as well. So it was quite hard, but when I finally gave it all my time and energy, I knew this is what I want, and I put everything I had to put in to make sure he was here, and it was really the best feeling ever.
How did you stay strong and keep it together for those, what was it, like 3 years when you were apart from him? 3 years in total, obviously. I know you went back and forth.
Yeah, it's just like knowing why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for myself, obviously. I'm doing it for him. Obviously, I'm going to look back in 3 years. I was like, wow, look at me. How much have I achieved just to make sure I put food on the table for my family and make sure I have a strong foundation. I'm doing it for him as well, because I started motherhood at a young age, like 20, that's super young. And I look back at myself, a 20-year-old me, like, silly you, what were you thinking? But I look at myself now and I'd be like, wow, I would not want anything less than I have today. Yeah.
How is he finding it in Loughborough now compared to Uganda?
He's enjoying, he's a local.
He's local.
Yeah, he's a local boy now.
I think actually when he came, like when he arrived, I remember seeing it and I actually cried a little bit because I knew how much, like, there's so many imports that are coming, you know, into the league that do have children and leave their children behind to kind of get that better life. And I don't think it's, number one, I don't think it's known enough and don't think it's talked about enough. Yeah. Like the hardships of being an import, I can relate to, but not an import with a child. Like there's so many factors there that I know you breezed over them, but you're such a strong woman. And I was just so happy to see it all kind of come together for you. Yeah. You deserve it.
I know, even the imports over the country, even if you don't have a child, just having your parents, like my mom has not watched me play live ever.
Right, get Mary's mum over here.
This is the campaign, Get actually all the imports mums.
Get them all over.
It's just not even, we're not asking for too much, but it's just like that kind of, just like the pride you see your mum and dad watching you, or even your brother, to have that kind of family feeling. Like I may have my son and that feels enough. But for those who don't have children, how more can the clubs or NSL can do for the imports? Because it's the life. Yes, we chose this life, obviously, but still, can we think of the psychological benefits you could have when you have your family around? Could be like 6 months, or even just like a visit, you know. It's just something to consider. Like, since we're moving, we're going big as well, we may as well just have these discussions that need to be considered in the future, because making a happy athlete also brings a lot of good results. Yeah.
What do you think the support is like being a elite athlete and a mum? Do you get much support in terms of childcare, being able to train? What if you can't find any childcare for him? What would you do in that situation?
I will speak for me, like with Loughborough, I feel like because they have had, obviously Stella, she's returned to play from having her girl, Maya, and she's having a baby. She has just had a baby now, she's returned to play, and she's a coach, she's turned back as a coach. And having those kind of stories and having more women come on board to kind of navigate the path for the rest of the women, like you could do it all really. But in terms of support, I don't think there's a lot of support being given to mothers. Childcare is expensive, and we kind of have to lean with our family and our social network. Like I have to work a lot with the church. Like I go to church, so having that church community to help, and just close friends, And if I'm really struggling, I will use one of our girls, netball girls, like, hey, could you just play with Jackson for 2 hours? Weigh him out.
I want to know who do you trust the most and who do you trust the least in that Loughborough team with yourself?
I would say Beth Cockton. She's really good with kids. I would trust him. I would trust her to have Jackson for a day.
That's all well and good. We want to know who you trust the least.
The least. Yeah.
Who can't take care of themselves?
I wouldn't say really, because I feel like everyone is like so chatty, and because it's a boy as well, it's just like it's not a lot of like attention. It's just like give him the ball. If you toss the ball around, that's it. You're playing already, and there's not a lot to do with like trying to be, oh, you're right, like chat, go chat. No, it's just the boys just throw the ball. It's just attention itself. But I would say like having that sisterhood, girlhood stuff, just having women around to support other women. I feel like having a child is not only one person having. You kind of, if you're in a team environment, your child is going to be exposed to like 12 girls at least, and all have to be like sisters and just trying to help around the way they can. And I feel like those things should be considered when you talk about maybe having a newborn, like how much, and you have a away game, you have to travel like 2 hours to go, for example, in London. How can you support like maybe simple things of like parking space, or even like providing a ticket for the babysitter or things like that. I don't think those things are not really looked after, but we are not asking for too much as mothers because obviously it's a personal decision. It's not a burden to everybody, but it's just like those little considerations that people could do, like they don't come to mind, but actually could help a lot. It's just simple things as checking in.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Joe, how do you find it? I don't know, I mean, is it different in the UK than it is out in New Zealand and Australia? Because in Australia, they have creches in some of the netball teams, don't they? Which is like a fairly new thing, but probably incredibly helpful.
I think like growing up, it's really interesting because I think like during the last 14 years that I've been kind of in a professional environment, I remember like being 18, 19, 20, and it was girls would finish their career, then they'd have children. So there's a mix between people having children like younger and in career rather than post-career. And I think there's a real, I don't know, I think it's quite hard at the moment because I know there's a big group of us possibly in the NSL that are like, right, like for me personally, I'm kind of at the age, I'm very, kind of vocal about it. I'm wanting children, in the near future. But then, is that to come back on court? Is that not? And I think in New Zealand, Australia, they really led the way, as in players would go and have children and be like embraced coming back. And I think that was the kind of first picture of that. I think more so maybe in Australia, but I also know some of the top athletes that were phenomenal. They came back for a year and said, actually, my priority is with my child, is with my family. So yeah, it's something that is definitely, I know, I think one of the New Zealand teams had about 4 mums in it. And I know all their partners, they all came across, but and New Zealand pays for that to come across. And
at the World Cup.
At the World Cup,
We shared a hotel with the Ferns, and I think Jane Watson's husband and baby was there. And they would sit and have breakfast with the team. And like you say, if it helps Jane Watson feel happier and more at home, knowing that she's got a happy baby there and a happy husband, she's going to perform better for the team. So it comes down to money as well, I suppose, to put up an extra room. But did you ever think you might not ever play professional football then? Netball.
Netball, Niamh. Come on.
So indecisive. Did it ever cross your mind then, having a baby, you might have thought, actually, I might never play professional netball? Or
was there even a picture when you were 20 though? Yeah. Did you even think about it? Because I know Peace must have just come over around that time.
Yeah. No, I was not even thinking of going pro at all. Being seen as a professional player. But like when I was 20, I didn't think netball was going to take me anywhere really. It was just like for fun, and I thought it was just a phase that would just go and pass. And
I was listening to rock music. Netball was a phase for you.
I thought it was a phase, but obviously my destiny was not quite written. So when I had my boy, I didn't think I was going to return. I knew I was going to return back to studies, finish my studies. That was obvious. And then I had to do like weekend studies, and then slowly came back to netball because the university I was at, it was still like a sports university. They're playing basketball, volleyball, and I was kind of, as a sport person, you never really sit down, do you? It's just like, okay, I'm seeing some people play, I'm just gonna go there, wear my trainers. Before I knew it, I was back to it. And that's how I returned again to play. And
There's no pelvic floor exercises.
No.
Straight into volleyball.
Yeah, straight into it. Nothing. I did not even do any exercise at all. But I was just like straight into intensity. My friend, my childhood friend, was still at the same university, and she's really like fit. And she was like, Mary, we're gonna do it. We're gonna return back. And we're doing morning runs, endless. She nearly killed me.
You love that.
Running every morning. I was like, killing me. It's a baby. It's like 2 months ago. It's like, give me a break. It's like, you're gonna be thankful. And then the same year, 2018, I got called for the national team, the She Cranes, and then that was the same year I got spotted to come back to come to Loughborough. The next year, I was in Loughborough. So it just happened so quick. I didn't have time to decide or even think. It was just, everything just happened, perfect timing. And I did not process everything too much. I just took the opportunity. But I'm thinking, for my second baby, when is the right time? Like that's.
Does that worry you? Is that in your mind, thinking, can you even get that timing right?
No. It just feel like I'm at a peak every year. Like, when do I take a year in, out? And it's so hard when you think about people who are having baby for the first time. When is the right time? It's never a right time. It's just like, and it sometimes happens naturally. And for the people who like to plan, you kind of want to plan financially. Are you gonna be okay for the whole year? Like, how is your, like, you don't even know how your body is gonna look like. You don't know the condition. Are you gonna be fit enough, or you're gonna have some complications during birth? Those things is so hard to kind of say, okay, I'm gonna return back in this kind of period.
Do you worry about, so if you decided now that you wanted to have a second child, do you worry about, would you worry about telling that to your teammates, say mid-season or, at the start of the season, I'm not going to play this year because I've decided to have a child, or I'm pregnant? Is that something that would worry you?
I would be worried to say that, obviously, because you're like, oh God, Mary, you're still young, hang in there. Hang in there. I told this to my best friend, and she was like, actually, I'm thinking of having a second child. I'm not saying it. I'm thinking of having it. When is the good time? She was like, I don't think this is a good time, Mary. I was like, when though?
But then, that's hard, isn't it? Because then your child gap gets longer and longer. And then you're gonna, you might end up with. Is he 7 at the moment?
Yeah, it kind of needs a mate,
12. That's the thing. Like, how are huge life decisions that are getting so. Like, not controlled, but as an elite athlete, again, as a woman in elite sport as well, you don't know how your body's going to bounce back. Are you going to be able to come back on, onto the court? Do you even want to? Or The
thing is, there's no guarantee of a contract at the end of it either.
This is also
If you're in a normal job, you're obviously permanent.
You get maternity leave and come back.
Yeah.
So you don't have maternity leave necessarily?
I don't know. How would it work with budgets? Because you have...
This is the tough thing. I think we had this conversation this morning, because I said, actually, the motherhood thing, it's quite hard, because I'm two minds about it. Yes, absolutely, we need to support females in sport, becoming pregnant, but also if you want to get pregnant that year and you commit to a contract, but you're committing your body to a contract in my team. So actually, like, most pregnant women would probably see through their job until about 8 months, majority. You can't do that playing netball. But then if I'm still, as a coach, my coach side is like, if I'm still paying you and I have to pay your contract out, that means I can no longer, number one, if you've taken that spot, I don't have the whole access to everyone anymore because everyone's signed. So then my team doesn't get the benefit of there's so many factors that go into it, and like on a side that, you know, I as a player, I would want the support, but then also there needs to become a really solid middle ground of, you know, what maternity pay looks like to support both the club and and the franchise itself.
If the Super League became fully professional, do you think that would help?
I just don't think it would change the issues. You know, if you're talking about the issues around the contract, the issues around maternity, it doesn't actually, whether you're paid more or you're contracted to be in a training venue for more hours than we are at the moment, it still doesn't change the fact that you're going to have to be out of the sport and out of playing for like probably the best part of 6 months if you decide to get pregnant. That still remains the same whether or not you're paid more. It still leaves the same problem of the pool of players that is gone by the time you potentially announce your pregnancy, that you still leave a team short a player, that you maybe feel under pressure to time it at a certain time. Those things all stay the same, and that's not just unique to netball, like that's the same in football, basketball, any female sport's going to be the same.
I think in football, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure in football, if a player can't play because of pregnancy, they can then bring in they can sign another player.
Yeah.
So that should happen.
No, I think that is the same in netball, but you don't have, it's the security of, when I have this baby, will they want me afterwards? Do you know, will I get another contract? Will I be fit to play? Will I want to play? When's the good timing? Are all my teammates going to fall out with me because I've announced my pregnancy the week before finals? There's all these questions that like doesn't affect a male sport because they just crack on. You know what I mean? And they can, but you know, it doesn't. It's completely different. And I think it very much dominates like how you live your life because you know it's like, well, I'll just not have a child. I'll organise that around my life and put netball first.
So obviously, you could be putting off having children or a family because the support might not be there. It might not work with your career. So do you have access to conversations where people talk to you about the risks of maybe putting it off or fertility, those sorts of conversations? Because as a woman in sport, that's a massive deal and isn't often talked about, is it?
I think that's where there could be more support, definitely.
I agree.
And I have friends in netball, outside of netball, who have had difficulties, and it's definitely something I think that can spring up as a surprise as well, because you know you come through the sport and you maybe take medications to like contraception, you know, to prevent pregnancy as you come through, to put netball first, to play at the best level. You know, a lot of girls take it even to control periods to allow them to perform at the highest level, and then you get to 31, 32 and you're like, okay, now it's time for me to settle down, have a family. And has that masked a problem for a long time? That's something that's definitely more common than you would think. And all of a sudden you're 32, you've had no advice on, you know, investigations for fertility, how long you should be taking these medications, like egg storage, all that kind of stuff is never discussed at all. It's nearly taboo. And then you get to 32 and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I had an issue. And that issue was never sorted when I was 25, when I was peak fertility age, because I was playing netball. And not that you would change it, but it's not discussed. And I think it's something that's very lacking and always comes nearly too late for a lot of girls who then have those dreams of maybe potentially having a child ruined. You know,
that is such a problem, isn't it?
I think the Netball Players Association, who are still very much in its infancy over here in the UK compared to countries like New Zealand and Australia, are doing a lot more for those taboo subjects.
Yeah.
You know, we recently have pelvic health screening surveys. We're doing a lot on careers outside of netball, like Joe talked about, and mortgage advice. But I do think the pregnancy thing is probably massive, and it's probably on lots of girls' minds at that age. Like you said, as a doctor, then do you see it from a different point of view again?
I think so, and I've actually had friends, players, come to me and ask about it. Do you know, should I take this? Is this right? Is this worrying that this is what's going on? And it's difficult because in terms of my job, that's not something I do day to day. Yes, I have a bit better knowledge of it than
You're an A&E doctor?
I work in A&E, so there's not an awful lot of fertility questions come at me, do you know what I mean, in my day job. Like, have I done a module on it when I was 21? Maybe at some point, hung over in a lecture somewhere. It's in there in the dust. But like, you know, it's difficult because you so want to help your teammate, and you so want to help your friend and be like, look, this is what I think's better. But also you want that teammate to play on and continue playing on your team, do you know, that kind of way. So it is hard. I can see it from both sides, because I think as you get a bit older in the sport as well, I don't know what you think about this, but when you're younger, you sort of think, oh, you've got all the time of the day, 10 years, I'm only 21, I'm only 25, all of a sudden it's 31.
I'm only 31.
I'm only 31, do you know what I mean? And you hear people who are maybe, 35, 36 beginning to talk about it, and you're like, actually, that's only round the corner, and it's much sooner than you think. And what is the 5-year plan? And all of a sudden, if netball ends, do you suddenly need to start thinking about, how do you settle down? Where do you settle down? Because all of a sudden you find yourself in Worcester, Surrey, anywhere, not places you thought you were going to be. And it is great, but, have you got a partner in those places? Has that person followed you? If you wanted to have a baby, do you have the money for a baby? Because, you have netball money. It is very difficult. There are lots of subjects that, as you say, rightly so, like the MPA have been brilliant in trying to flag them, and there's different seminars and stuff that we can begin to go to. I don't think there has been ones on fertility specifically. There has been ones a wee bit around pregnancy and postpartum and returning to play, but I do think sometimes it's forgotten about that actually as we've come through the sport as well, the age of the players has increased. When I was 19, everyone retired at 30. It was oh, you're 30 now because you're going to go and have a baby and a family and you've got married, and that's wonderful. But now there's 40-year-olds in the league and they're just as good. There's the facilities to make these players last so much longer, and I think that's brilliant because I don't know, do you want to go to 40?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So but then it's
2 years
difficult.
ago.
I know. I just thought we were really good for that.
But that is an issue that women are told to be on contraception. That is such a big thing. It's all about education around how to stop getting pregnant for your whole teens, for your whole 20s, and then suddenly it's oh, but hold on, what happens when I want to get pregnant? And that affects women in everyday life and society anyway in careers. But when you're an elite sports person, that must be so difficult to navigate. And now, Jo, you've moved over to coaching as well. Does that change anything for you?
I think there is so many pressures as a female in sport as it is, and I think knowing there are players that potentially fertility is a thought in their head, pregnancy, coming back on court, there's so many factors to that happen with players in general without pregnancy even coming and motherhood even coming into the picture. It's quite daunting sometimes, speaking about this. I'm quite open at the moment about, yes, this is my near future and I'm kind of voicing it, but I'm also on my own journey that I hope may help athletes. And you do start becoming like that. You're actually, is my story valid? And where I am at in the sport, where I'm at in my personal life, and then how can I help others? Because there's not a platform really in the sport that does that. And so I'm thinking in my head, do I share more of my journey? I know others in the sport as well are potentially in a similar space to where I'm at. And it is, you think, okay, well, at 16 I chose to go on a pill that basically stopped my periods for 10 years. And you go, but that was sport driven. I knew I wanted to be an elite athlete. I knew that's what I wanted. And that was okay, great for that time. And then, a few years later, I was like, right, I want to see if everything works. Does it all work like normal? Okay, it does. But again, you don't know exactly what Niamh said, the damage you've done or what's happened to your body across that time. And so I think, both as a coach, it's possibly a need for support in that area. I can't take that on board as a coach for my players. I can support them as best I can, but I can't guide that. Do you know what I mean? I can be part of those conversations and support it, but there needs to be, again, a framework around and support around our players in a lot more areas than possibly there is.
Yeah, because Jiva Mentor, I think, is one of the players that's been really vocal.
Eggs?
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, and she's spoken a lot about it. She said she realised almost too late that she had to freeze her eggs, and she said she'd encourage players when they're 25 to think about doing that. Yeah. Is that often discussed at all?
Not at all.
It's not. I have had a discussion with one player about it, and it's funny because it put it in my head, and even though I'm medical, I had never even considered that. I was like, oh, geez, why would you be doing that? It wasn't something that ever even entered my thought process. It's not talked about. And then I had a discussion with this player and she said, you know, I have frozen mine. And I was like, wow, like, tell me more. Like, I'm so intrigued. And like, this player had a child, but came back to netball and had frozen them on the possibility that she might stay in netball for longer. And it really actually made me like go away and like read about it, because there's no other forum to discuss it with. And I've actually never discussed it with any other player, because I don't actually think that there's other people are on that page or on how important it is. And it's great to hear that actually Jiva has spoken about that, because I think it's probably something that netballers would need to think about a bit more as we're getting a wee bit older.
I would have 8 years ago, hearing that, and 25, I would have probably frozen my eggs.
Would you?
Yeah. If I was more knowledgeable about a lot more things, yeah, but because it's not spoken about, and you're kind of in the dark, like Niamh said, she's medical, and it's not something she's thought about. So it's definitely not something that's really crossed my mind. Do you know what I mean? And you kind of go, well, you know, how easy is that? Like, we used to have a doctor come into the changing rooms when I played in New Zealand, and literally flu jab us all. Like, literally bang, bang, bang. Like, not saying that the process needed to be the same. Like, there was consent. Yeah, there was consent. But how simple is the procedure? Does it mean you're out for weeks? Like, there's just no, I guess, education. And Niamh's right. You can go and look it up and read about it, but also when I Google stuff, I'm dying. So, like, do you know what I mean? I think it's a scary space to start Googling. It's, you know, because you get, I guess, opinions from, you know, people that may have had it, people that may not have had it, or bad experiences. Like, there's just, there's a lot to unpack.
And again, it's expensive.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to actually ask. I was like, I don't even know how much it costs.
You'd have to go privately for it, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And we do have private medical insurance, but it can be hard enough to get a scan and an ankle MRI. Yeah.
Which it should cover, yeah. Does this cover?
Don't Google your ankle symptoms, because you are dying.
But you know, it's everything to do with your health is quite a scary space, I think, and it's something that later on in life, and now that I'm 33, I'll be 34 in June, and you kind of go, damn, I wish these conversations were so prevalent when I was 10 years ago. Yes, I've seen people, like you do, you've seen people leave the sport, come back to it, but you're like, exactly what Mary said, is my body going to do that? Is my body actually going to be okay? Is my pregnancy going to, go well? Or my birth? Like, the thought of birth still petrifies me. I still want a child, but the birth bit, I'm like skipping in my head, like blacking that out. And you just
is it as bad as we think?
No, it's just a 1 minute thing. As soon as you push it.
Damn, bro!
Yeah, go for it. That lecture.
But it's hard. Everyone has different experiences, I would say. Mine was, it took me a whole day trying to get the baby out. And once it's done, it's a beautiful, magical moment. It's scary. It's scary. And I think, like, nobody prepares you for that. And it's always these decisions around motherhood, it has to come from you. Nobody helps you navigate that path. And that's why it's so challenging. Like, when you ask people, it's like you're stepping a ladder to someone's life, So it's so hard to kind of say, this is what I need you to do for me. Because you don't know what you need sometimes. But having that support system everywhere to help with decision making and stuff like that, and the ease for you to say, right, if I'm gonna have a baby, would everyone welcome me back? Would I have the physio, the S&C to kind of make sure I'm fit enough? Would there be pressure for me to return back? From my own personal perspective, I want to be as better as I used to be. I don't want to be set back because of a child. So it's so hard to find a common ground. There's just so much to do.
So much to think about, isn't it?
So much to do and think about.